is up, Internet? Sometimes to love someone, you gotta be a stranger. My name is Matthew Kroll.
And you're sitting around watching TV, and suddenly you discover a wasp crawling on your wrist. I'm Shahir Dowd.
And this is the only podcast about movies, specifically the film. Shahir, what are we doing?
Blade Runner 2040... Which one was it? 2040... Was it 47? 48?
49.
49.
Blade Runner 2049.
Yeah.
Come on.
And we are joined by special guest returning to the podcast after his triumphant debut on our Aliens episode. Also the DP of work by Nigel Stanford that I have directed, including Cymatics Automatica and a whole lot of other stuff that you probably would have seen.
Yes.
Cinematographer, all around nice guy, great glasses, Timur Savan. Because this is an audio-visual medium, you just got to imagine the glasses, by the way. Timur, welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you for having me, guys. My glasses actually go through the internet into people's homes.
So technically anyone listening to this on their phone or their iPod or whatever, their computer, are now wearing your glasses.
In the future, if you're in the Blade Runner universe, you will always have Timur's glasses on, like an emoji.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Permanently attached.
Permanently attached.
How you doing, buddy? We haven't talked since last January.
Yeah, I think we got together for Aliens.
We did.
Yeah, and so there's a fun fact about this is we recorded that Aliens episode almost a year ago.
Yeah.
And then held off until the release of Automatica, which took us a little while, unfortunately.
A little while.
A little while.
Quotes.
So even though you may have recently heard Timur on that Aliens episode, it's been a while since we've spoken, Timur. You've been busy? You and I haven't caught up in a while.
Yeah, I've had a hell of a summer. Just been it's been nonstop. It's sort of like a strange shift has happened career-wise. So I'm just like trying to catch my breath. Right now.
Well,
Is it a shift we can talk about?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just doing different things, like getting ever since it's funny, ever since Automatica, Shahir and I both are somewhat guilty of occasionally sneaking a clip or two to people to just kind of be like, yes, I make nice stuff, but wait till you see this.
Right.
And so, just sort of it's, when people get to know you for what you do. So like, working on.
You're the robot guy now.
I'm the oh damn, that's really hard to film guy.
Oh really? That's dope.
So it's just been all technical stuff and like high speed and strange special effects and
I mean that sounds way cooler than he's the guy that can almost pull it off guy. You know what I mean?
Yes.
No, I'm saying it as a reputation. You want to be the guy who's known for the ability to pull off cool, intricate shit.
Yeah,
as opposed to, that dude's real good at cat food commercials. Like, so
which, believe it or not, I have a cat food commercial that has something insane, like 30 million views.
The best of both worlds.
Wow.
It's the Meow Mix techno.
I will have to check that out. My cat will flip her litter. But we're not talking about cat litter here.
We're talking about Blade Runner. But before we get to Blade Runner, I just want a quick shout out to a couple of tweets and conversations that have been going on in the only podcast about movies cinematic universe.
And even before you do that, if other people wanted to do it, Shahir, before, how could the people do it before if they wanted to write in before this episode before?
Before you could do that, you could get on the internet, perhaps with your ISP, go to dial-up if you need to, but also go to the cables and the fiber optics and whatever you have.
The series of tubes.
Sign up to Twitter if you want, give yourself a username and a password and a nice cat photo. Then go onto our Twitter page, which is at OnlyMoviePod, or also hit us up via email. You'll have to sign up for a Gmail account for this one or whatever, or maybe an AOL account. And email us at onlymoviepodcast@gmail.com to give us your thoughts and feedbacks. And I just wanted to, I wasn't here last week.
Welcome back.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to give a special shout out because I've been having a lot of conversations with people on the internet of people who listen to us, and it's been really lovely. And I was remarking to myself that yes, we are the only podcast,
the only
podcast about movies, but I will admit, we're not the biggest podcast in the world. Like maybe it's This American Life and then us. I don't know. But
yes, okay, where are you going with this?
But I just wanted to say, the people who do listen to our show are very, very smart and engaged, and I really love it when people come on to Twitter and talk to us and continue the conversations that we have in this room, and I'm just in a generous mood, I guess, and in a sort of reflective mood. I just want to say thank you to all those people. I both of us, Matt,
100%.
Really appreciate everyone who reaches out to us and talks to us.
It's so lovely. Shahir, I know you are more of the vocal back and forth with many of our fans, and I just so everyone knows who writes in and gets into a conversation about with Shahir, I'm the lurker, and I'll probably say, like, I'm reading everything and I'm loving it, but I'll probably just say one smart ass thing and then I'll go back to the shadows.
Out of there.
No, I mean, look, we have a small yet dedicated fan base, and you people are the reason why we keep talking into the ether. So thank you very much for listening, and
couple of those people included Rajiv on Twitter, who is actually a friend of mine, someone I knew back in New Zealand. Just a long, drawn-out conversation about can Batman be black, which was a great discussion we had a few weeks ago.
With Damian Lemon and Carolina Ravassa.
That's right. Lots of good stuff there. In fact, Rajiv showed me a photo of when Batman was actually black, which was a fun little discovery.
So podcast ruined.
Yeah, there you go. Rajiv is also the host of the A to Z of New Zealand Film, or the A to Z of NZ Film, and they have a special episode this week with Cliff Curtis. If you know, Cliff Curtis is the actor who can play any ethnicity. He's currently the lead on The Walking Dead. You would have seen him in several films. I'm trying to rattle them off the top of my head, but Training Day is one that comes to mind.
Right.
The Insider. He's just a phenomenal actor, and he's currently on their show this week. So check out the A to Z of NZ Film. We had a really lovely tweet from Jacob, one of our regular listeners, about our Mother episode. Jacob just commented rather lovely that he had listened to a few other podcasts about Mother, and he thought ours was the best discussion of it. So I appreciate that. Also,
thanks, buddy.
NZ Astro, who I believe I actually know who this is, says this is the only podcast I listen to, and I actually believe that to be true, because this is the person I think it is. He does reach out to me after every episode to discuss. So thank you, NZ Astro, for that iTunes review. Matt, last week, you guys reviewed American Made, and I wasn't here, but I dropped in some questions. Timur, have you seen American Made, by the way?
I have not.
It seems to be a movie that has slipped under the radar of a lot of people.
Much like Seal's piloting abilities itself, it just seems to not be able to be blipped anywhere.
Not Kissed by a Rose Seal.
No.
but that really didn't land.
No.
I was really hoping for us to do a little bit of la da 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 da. No,
okay, not there yet. Let me have a drink first here. Jeez.
But I wrote in a couple of questions about Tom Cruise. I appreciate you guys answering those questions. I'm surprised nobody mentioned one of my favorite Tom Cruise movies, Magnolia, which I think is a real good example. For those people who didn't listen, catch up on that episode. The episode talked about Tom Cruise's persona, and I wanted to figure out if American Made kind of reinforced what we believe to be true about the Tom Cruise persona that has made him so popular as a box office draw, or subverted it. And I think you guys talked a little bit about movies that have subverted it. I think Magnolia is one of those. There is actually, I found, and this is for anyone who's interested in the Tom Cruise cinematic universe, there is a piece of academic authorship on Tom Cruise as an identity on screen. The book is called Tom Cruise, Performing Masculinity in the Post-Vietnam Hollywood by Ruth O'Donnell. And I just wanted to pull up this quote, which
sounds like a laugh-a-minute document.
If you're interested in scholarly research on the not the personality of performers, but what do actors actually signify, I think it's an interesting one. And this is the quote that Ruth O'Donnell wrote, which was, amid Reagan-era military jingoism and concern over declining industrial labor, he, Tom Cruise, represented a new model of American masculinity based on white-collar upward mobility. Spanning blockbuster films such as Risky Business, Jerry Maguire, and Mission Impossible series, this book illustrates how his characters exemplify entrepreneurialism, charisma, technological gadgetry, and verbal acuity to redefine male success. And I think there's something to this idea of Tom Cruise representing an aspirational quality that we all kind of that I think as moviegoers we identify with. There's something to me that Tom Cruise personality has to do with a work ethic that's not only in his off-screen persona but in his on-screen persona as well. So it's an interesting conversation. You guys should check out the episode on American Made. Matt, you're kind of squinting at me like you're not quite in agreement.
I mean, I'd have to dive more into Tom Cruise. I don't. That's putting a lot of social onus on him in a weird way. Maybe that's true, and the book might prove that. Right. It's a hard thing for me to swallow just on face value. But go check that out and see if that turns you or reestablishes whatever pre-existing opinions you may have.
Wait, I don't remember Tom Cruise being in Blade Runner. Did he play the dead tree?
He most certainly did. It was one of his highest paid cameos.
Is that your subtle way of telling us to talk about the film we asked you to come talk about?
Yes, please.
Fine.
Matt, this is the third film by Denis Villeneuve that we have done on this podcast.
It sure is.
The other two being Enemy and Sicario.
And Arrival.
Oh, so this will be the fourth film.
Yeah.
He might be the most ubiquitous auteur or filmmaker
He didn't do Prisoners?
He did do Prisoners, but we haven't reviewed it on this podcast.
We didn't review that.
Why have we not reviewed Prisoners?
We should, because Prisoners also reunites Villeneuve with Roger Deakins, and it's probably one of my favorite films that came out that year.
Now we're talking.
It's a masterpiece. It's frankly, it's another one of those films that slipped under a lot of people's radars, but it's an incredible film. I just rewatched it again recently. Not only beautiful, but just haunting. I think if you enjoyed the film Seven, perhaps, you will really, really get a lot out of Prisoners.
Interesting.
So, Matt, Villeneuve made your favorite film of 2016.
Yes, which is crazy. So I was fairly psyched for this movie, though in an interesting way. Just getting into my history with Blade Runner, I don't have one.
Have you not seen the original?
I hadn't seen it until maybe 2002.
Okay.
And by then, it was an interesting experience. I've always seen it twice in my life. Once then, and then once last week.
Okay.
And I didn't particularly like it. Okay. I watched a 2007 version this time, director's cut or whatever the latest cut is, the final cut.
Yeah.
It was slow and boring, and I didn't find many characters other than the main bad guy interesting.
Roy Batty?
Yeah. And I think what got me the most was because I think because it's such a beautiful film and it sets up such a lived-in world, that would have been enough to get me by on everything else. Mm-hmm. But the fact that most every other sci-fi thing I love has basically strip mined this movie down to like noodle shop owners looking exactly the same and like Cowboy Bebop. Like everything about Blade Runner I had already ingested in other media, even though it came from here.
Right.
So I didn't enjoy it from a perspective of, oh my God, this feels so new and interesting. This was just like, oh man, the art direction and the cinematography of this movie are great.
Yeah, but the movie was 32, 40, whatever
35
years old, 35 years old at that point.
Yeah, 1982.
So Timur and I have talked extensively about Blade Runner in the past on set and probably offline. Timur, what's your, and I know you've been hunting around for a 4K version of Blade Runner for a little while. Did you finally manage to get that?
I did. I found it. Ooh. And it's actually, it's funny. The minute I started looking for it, it was released like 4 days later.
Oh, wow.
And I just I scoured the internet for it and I just said, let me just check Amazon one last time. And then boom, there it was.
I wish
4K,
that worked.
HDR, all the goodies, remastered version. And it's not so much that, the resolution of 4K isn't really that big of a deal. The 1080 version I have looks pretty much as good.
Yeah.
But it's that HDR part where you just get all the rich saturated colors and the neon of the signs, it doesn't glob up. It just looks rich and real and luscious and three-dimensional. And it's just absolutely beautiful.
I wish I had the same luck with my very same hunt for Jim Cotta, but it just has not happened yet.
4K.
The 4K copy of Jim Cotta has not been released yet, and I will keep petitioning.
It'll happen one day.
But that's cool. That's cool as shit. And HDR is such an interesting sort of it's a basically, I mean, how would you describe that very quickly? It's contrast technology, right? for lack of a better term?
The darks are darker, the brights are brighter, the colors can be more saturated without getting weird.
Yeah, and I think I've only seen video games played, and I don't think I've actually seen a film on it yet.
Yeah, it's not to be confused with HDR in the like photography sense, though.
Right, of course.
Which looks strange.
Yeah,
you know?
HDR in the photography sense gives you a higher, different bumps of exposure, both in the positive and negative, to give you a fuller image, which is not technically untrue for what it is in film, but it doesn't work in the same way.
I just find it so interesting, and maybe even coming from a cinematographer's perspective too, Timur. This might be this is up for debate, but I think HDR technology makes images look better than 4K does. And maybe it's because I'm watching these things.
I agree with you 100%. I think HD, if 1080, for example, if you put two screens next to each other, one of them is a standard dynamic range 4K image, and you somehow magically created 1080 HDR, you will be more attracted to the 1080 HDR image because it just looks better.
I gotta.
That's the benefit. It's not the res. It's the color and the contrast.
I mean, basically every project I've directed for the last 3 or 4 years has been in 4K, and so I'm getting to see these things in 4K. And I got to be honest with you, the perceptual difference between 4K and standard HD definition is really imperceptible.
It's really so you can reposition, right? I mean, that's kind of what it's turned into. At least the stuff that I've worked on, everyone's like, oh, 4K, so we can actually slide around a little bit when we make our final 1920 by 1080. And I'm like, I don't know if that's the way we should be.
No, and it actually doesn't work as well as that, because you're still scaling pixels up. And so a pixel is still a fixed size. And if you scale it up,
well, we're just technically scaling it down.
Yeah. Or if you're rescaling for,
I see what you're saying.
Yeah. It's still a pixel being bigger. Timur actually, recently the Red camera just released what is it called? The Monstro.
They have two 8K cameras now. Ooh. So 4K is long gone. Now we're doing 4K.
And Timur, you actually just put up a side-by-side comparison or an explanation of what.
Well, I just did an explanation of, when anytime like some kind of new technology is released, there's always people who are like, these are the same guys that sit on porches and predict the weather by the ache in their knees, And, there was some people who were saying, why are we even bothering with this, 8K? This is so stupid, blah, blah, blah. You're never going to notice it. But the truth is you do. I mean, the analogy I used was that it's like a Retina display on a Mac.
Right.
Yeah.
It's so the pixels are so small and there's so much resolution that the actual material that makes up the image becomes invisible. It becomes paint. It stops being pixels.
Yeah, right. which is super cool. But I also think, like, in your professional opinion, at what screen would that size does that really become noticeable? But
it's not that's the thing, is that it's not about it looking sharper. It's just about the pixels getting out of the way of the picture.
Right.
Okay. All right.
That's the idea.
All right. Yeah. Fair enough. So yeah.
So Timur, circling back to Blade Runner itself. So you're obviously, because it's a gorgeous looking film, you're obviously a fan of the way it looks. But beyond that, do you actually like Blade Runner the film?
The original.
The original film?
Yeah.
Oh my God, I love that film.
Right. From a story point of view?
Yeah, from a story point of view. I mean, I find, for me, it's the most immersive movie I think I've ever seen.
Right.
When I was a little kid, I think I might have mentioned it last time, but I've watched Star Wars literally 1,000 times because I watched it 3 times a day for 5 years. But Blade Runner was right behind it. It was this movie that I would consume anytime I could because I just wanted to live in Los Angeles 2019.
Why? You wanted to live
I wanted to go to the off-world colonies, man.
But they never show the off-world colonies.
It doesn't matter. It's just there's something about the rain and the darkness and the crime and the fact that animals are gone. So they're all these like mechanized, replicant animals. And it was just such an interesting world because it was so close and it wasn't that far away. And it was almost like something to live up to and live down to, I suppose. But
you sounded more goth than I did back then with the description of wanting to live in a dark dystopian rain factory.
Yeah, it's weird. I don't know. Like I was a really happy kid, but I just loved that. I love that world, and I liked Decker, and I loved Rachel, and Roy Batty was the man, you know, Pris and all, all of them, Leon and all the characters, they were all just, there was a childlike quality to the replicants that I think, in a weird way, like, being a young person, I associated with them because they kind of didn't understand the world that they were in.
Right.
Even though the beautiful line as it is, I've seen things you people wouldn't believe. But the question, what makes it interesting is he realizes in the time when he's dying that maybe he didn't understand what it is that he had seen until that moment.
Right. And everything he's seen will be lost like tears in the rain.
Like Tears in the Rain, which he made up, which Rutger Hauer came up with.
Yeah.
Best line in the.
I have to admit, I saw Blade Runner a little bit later in life as well. I saw it, I think, when I was like, I don't know, 15, 16 or something like that. And I wasn't, I remember being in admiration of the film as a production. Like it seemed to me like no other film I'd seen before. But I wasn't that enamored from a narrative point of view. I found, and I, as time has gone and the sort of multiple cuts has come out and the different interpretations of what, what Deckard is and whether he's a replicant or not. We talked about this a little bit on our Alien Covenant episode where we did a little bit of back history on Ridley Scott and his often releasing director's cuts that fundamentally change what we understand about the film.
Man's never finished.
Yeah, so I've often found that to be more of an example of unclear filmmaking but I like you, Matt, I watched it again the night before I went and saw Blade Runner. I watched the final cut and I am still in, despite my misgivings about this film, my general, it's not a film I believe I will watch unless I need to. Whereas there are other films that I will watch, just at the drop of a hat.
Yeah.
When I watched it, I was like, there are no other films like this. Even, because it's a melding of film noir, so the kind of gritty crime thriller, that we saw from the '60s, with this sort of pop future techno universe that was coming to fruition. That would come, that would kind of like find its final coalescence in say something like the Terminator, but it's much more ambitious and painterly than a film like the Terminator. It's much more. I
would say its art direction is more ambitious than the art direction of Terminator. I wouldn't say it as a film is more ambitious.
I think it's 100% more ambitious than Terminator, without a doubt.
Nope. Terminator 2, not Terminator. I'm sorry. It is
a much more ambitious film in terms of what it's trying to do. And there are not many films like it. It's also, we talked a little bit about, Ridley Scott's batting average as far as his success rate as a director goes. Right. And I think this is this and Alien are the films that give him the right to make whatever films he wants for the rest of his career, because they are not only among his best work, but also among the best work of any filmmaker. So while I don't love Blade Runner, I think it is a beautiful and enigmatic film that is worth multiple viewings. I
gotta be honest. I was so surprised. I mean, I remember watching it and being like, "Oh, that's cool" the first time, and then rewatching it, how fucking. And this is, I'm glad if other people, obviously many other people enjoy it, but I was so bored.
Right.
I was so bored. The only thing that made me not bored were the visuals, which were always sort of engaging, and then I started enjoying it a bit on more of a technical level. Mm-hmm. But the second I looked back at story, I don't. And again, I think it's because it's been strip mined away, and pieces of it have been put in so much other stuff. I feel like it's old hat, even though it's the grandfather. Like, but then there's some stuff that doesn't hold up. Like there's a pretty rapey moment. And that does not hold up in this day and age very well. It actually got me sort of questioning Deckard in general. And I was like, what is like, this is tonally different, but it is a noir trope. Mm-hmm. That they were moving into here, and then you get into the questions of, well, if she's a replicant, then is she the equivalent of a toaster? In which case you can't do anything, like it doesn't have rights, but that's the whole thing of the movie. And then I'm like, I'm just uncomfortable. Okay, so we are coming into Blade Runner 2049 from actually kind of three very different places. So we can all agree the original Blade Runner is technical mastery, and I think art direction and cinematography as well. Then we have Shahir, who thinks it's more than that, and then I think Timur, you think it's. I would say out of the three of us, you are the biggest champion of the original Blade Runner.
Of the original, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're coming at this sequel 35 years later from three different points.
And coming at it with a filmmaker that I think we're all fans of, Denis Villeneuve.
Oh, so good.
And so, and Timur, the reason we wanted to have you on the show as well is that this is another collaboration between Villeneuve and the
And
most,
we miss you.
I think one of the most nominated yet non-winning Oscar nominees of all time, Roger Deakins, cinematographer who is yet to win an Oscar. I'm sure this year will be his year, but it seems absurd that he hasn't been recognized so far.
I have a stronger religious affiliation with Roger Deakins than I do anything else in this life.
This life and the next, probably.
This life and the next.
I gotta tell you, so I am guilty of not knowing names a lot when it's the people behind the curtain. So when I was looking through this, because I thought this movie looked so fucking good, 2049. I went back and looked at Roger's filmography, and I'm looking.
It's all of them,
and I'm like,
it's all great movies.
Oh, this is all the shit I like, and like, how did I not know that this one dude shot all the shit I like?
He is the guy.
It's truly amazing, and so I don't know. I was.
It's funny, Timur and I, before we talk about this movie, and I think
before we talk about this movie,
because I think this is actually maybe a good indicator of how people feel about it, because one of the things that people are gravitating towards in discussions of this movie is the look of it. It is a striking film. Timur, before we even get into the narrative of it, walk us through you as a cinematographer watching this movie, just from a visual point of view.
See, it's funny. I walked out of the theater at the end, and I was just like, I think I just need to quit.
Right.
I was like, it's over. He finished it. It's done. There's nothing left. There's nothing I can add to the pool.
Movie making is over.
Yeah.
Movie making is now over. Well, cinematography is over. Okay. But there's a lot of, and while this movie didn't particularly have, and I'm talking 2049 didn't particularly. Well, before I get to the cinematography of 2049, because this is actually really an important part to me, we have to talk about Jordan Cronenweth, who shot the original.
Yes. Was it Jordan Cronenweth? I thought
Jordan Cronenweth is a very, very good cinematographer. He shot films like Peggy Sue Got Married, and a few other semi-well-known, medium-sized films.
A lot of music videos as well.
A lot of music. Yeah, he did do a lot of music videos.
Yeah.
But Blade Runner was, and this is probably where Ridley Scott chose him from, because really, he doesn't mess around. He's a high-end commercial guy. He only hires the best. But I feel like this, in that one instance, it was, when given the opportunity to go ham. He didn't just go ham. He went Iberian ham. You know what I mean? Like he just went fully. He took every single photographic element, lighting element, and you see the beauty and the texture of those sets. I mean, they're so detailed, and they're shot in some of the most beautiful locations. And they built these giant. They built half that city. I mean, it's the whole soundstage was street after street. It's steeped in darkness and rain and shafts of light from ominous helicopters or something. Like, you don't even know where the hell the light's coming from half the time, or why there's a light pointing in through his kitchen window, but it is. And the genius of his choices.
Yeah.
All of those little subtle choices, and they start compounding on each other, and it's very much a case of the sum is more than the value of the parts.
Yeah, there's a quality to that original Blade Runner that I've always talked about in every film I've made, but never been able to achieve, which is that the light is alive in that movie, and it's constantly moving. And you and I both know from a practical point of view that's really difficult to achieve. It causes all sorts of nightmares on set. But like as you say, in that film in particular, like even in, the scenes where Deckard is interviewing Rachel for the first time, there's just moving lights in every corner, and from a continuity,
it's my favorite word in the world. That lighting effect is called lucifaction.
Lucifaction. Yeah. Is that the reflection, the water reflection kind of?
It's the water reflection is called lucifaction. Yeah,
I wasn't even
light off water.
I wasn't even talking about that. I'm talking about like when he's sitting by a window, you get you constantly feel that there are objects moving through the light, around the windows, and the light shafts are changing constantly, and like that is a nightmare for continuity, is a nightmare for production, is a nightmare for everything involved, to the point where it's more trouble than it's worth a lot of times. But in the case of Blade Runner, this is the reason you do it, because it gives every scene a sense of lived in. It gives the entire film has a sense of being lived in because the light is constantly moving.
And I would say, to transition back to 2049, that this tradition and sort of the wow factor of the way the world looks and feels, for me, translated over beautifully. I think this movie, the 2049, is one of the most visually just stunning things I've seen in a long time. I saw it in an IMAX, even though it wasn't shot in that, I believe, but 2D.
Right. Yep. Good for you.
It was so good, and the sound was excellent, and it was just one of those things where I'm like, yes, this is why movie theaters exist, when they work like this. So it was one of those nice moments that I've been shitting on movie theaters a bunch on the podcast lately. This was the moment where it all came together. Now, granted, I went in an afternoon on a weekday, so it wasn't like, the crowd was not large, but it just struck me incredibly just about Roger Deakins. It's funny that we were talking about him before, is he's my favorite cinematographer that I never knew his name. Right. But I'm bad at that in general. And I think just something, even going off of the cinematography of this thing, the art direction and the costuming of this plays a huge role.
I think it's important to note that we always kind of forget about the other side of cinematography, which is the production design, and in both cases,
costumes. Renee April
gotta have something to shoot.
Did an amazing job clothing all these characters and making not only their clothes look cool as shit, but like really like lived in. And then there's a list of names you can go to IMDb, but like David Duran, Lyda Fry, Paul Angus, who was a supervising art director. Like they just made this world feel real, and it's so weird because it's a world that should not feel real. And I really you're immersed in it, whether you're talking about actually Las Vegas or the LA itself, like the different locations. It really, everything felt like, oh shit, this is a place.
So Timur, have you quit?
No.
Okay, you just saw this a couple of days, so you're still going.
In fact, I'm energized and ready to hopefully teach that man a lesson one day.
Oh, wow.
I just wanted to watch something I've made once and be like, oh, that's lovely. And that's enough for me.
The reason I say that is while I do agree this film is lovely to look at, it is to borrow a line from the Droogs from Clockwork Orange, it is gorgeosity. It's gorgeousness and gorgeosity defined. I have high expectations when it comes to a Roger Deakins lensed films these days, and while this is a beautiful movie, I will say that I think his work on the assassination of Jesse James is peak Deakins, if you will, and it is quintessentially the most beautiful thing he's ever done. And this, while beautiful, I still think the original Blade Runner actually is a better looking film. And maybe Timur.
I actually agree with you.
Yeah.
I think the original Blade Runner, there's one scene in the original that stands out to me as quintessentially why Jordan Cronenweth just, there's a word my wife uses. It's duende. It's when the magical spirit.
Oh, yeah. I've heard that word.
And I think Jordan Cronenweth went so much further beyond maybe even his own capabilities in this one case because he was inspired. It's when Decker finds the scale of the snake in the bathtub.
Right.
And there is this dancing fairy of light in the bathtub for no reason.
Right.
It's really bright. It's really prominent. It's not like it's an accident. It's very intentionally placed. And it's just one of those things where I'm looking at it saying that should not be there. That is a thing that most people would try to get rid of in a frame. But he not only features it, but he makes it dance. And when he touches the scale, it twitters a little bit because the fairy magic has been touched, you know? And I feel like when I found out they were making a sequel to Blade Runner, I think part of me, first of all, my insides died a little bit, and I was like, oh, they're really going to go and do this, and they're going to ruin this really badly, aren't they? And then I heard Denis Villeneuve was going to direct. I was like, oh, okay, all right. You know, if anybody today,
sure.
You know, maybe Denis Villeneuve, maybe P.T. Anderson, that could be interesting. You know, it might be a little different than we've been used to, but you know, okay, that's cool. And then they announced who the DP was, and it was Roger Deakins, and that's when I went, oh my God, thank you, God. You know, like he's not going to fuck this up.
And to be fair, I think, you know, like the smart things that Villeneuve and Deakins do is they don't try to copy the world of Blade Runner. They try to create something.
No, they make their own. They make their own thing of it.
They make their own universe, and I think that's really smart.
There's daylight in this one.
Yeah.
There's outside of the city. It's not pouring rain the entire time.
So. I just want to jump in real quick because you both said that you think the original looks better. I disagree. Granted, my profession is not in the professions that either of you are in. However, I have a theory. And it might not hold water, but it actually goes against me in a different way, this theory.
Okay.
So we were talking about Terminator 2, and I've been railing how they can't make the T-1000 look as good as they did in Terminator 2 when Shahir is like, no, like you can look at it clinically, they have, and I'm just like, I don't see it. I don't see it. And I think it's the same case, honestly, it could be anyway, with Blade Runner based on when you've seen it, what you took from the original versus this new one, as I feel with the original VFX of the T-1000, because it's this thing where it's, there is a, you're tied to it because you have sort of a bit of a history, and B, it's that feel on actual film of all of these magical things, Timur, that you had sort of mentioned that are happening versus now how they shoot movies and how things are all comped together definitely has a much different feel to it. So I'm wondering if it's a bit of kismet between these sort of opinions of ours, and I don't know. I honestly don't know, and it's hard to discern memories, as we learn in this movie, from what is real and what is just sort of manufactured by our brains.
Well, there is, of course, you know, something that's really important to remember is that, you know, where and when, when you were saying how, you know, the elements of Blade Runner, you've already consumed them through the homage of others.
Yes. Before
you've actually watched it, you know, you have to remember the context, right? So imagine in your mind, it's 1982. Okay. There has never, ever, up until that point, with the exception of like 1923's Metropolis, a futuristic city like that. Star Wars had a little bit of a taste of it, but it was more of a space opera. It was more about the ships, and that was basically swashbuckling high seas adventures. There has never been anything, and imagine yourself back in that time. No one has ever seen anything like that before, ever.
Yeah.
So every element of that film is brand new, right? Now, I'm trying to think of like I actually had a similar experience to you as I saw some classic movie now that I never saw back then. It was like something like the Maltese Falcon or whatever.
Sure.
And I hear all the lines and I see all the lighting and I see the blocking and I'm like, oh, that's from Raiders of the Lost Ark. That's from blah, blah, blah. And it did actually cheapen the Maltese Falcon. It actually made it feel quaint and trite and like it's almost making fun of itself because it's so cliche at this point.
Sure.
But at the time, that movie was groundbreaking.
Yeah. I just wish there was a phrase or maybe there is one. Maybe there is a psychological phrase based on nostalgia that I could look up, like, or not even nostalgia. It's like, it's just based on when you experienced a thing and why. I don't know. Anyway, I don't want to get too much into it. I just thought that was a real interesting
context.
Yeah. Context might just be it. And yeah, I don't know. Let's we've been dancing around for a bit. Can I read the IMDb?
Yeah, tell us what Blade Runner, for all this talk about look at how great it looks, what's it about?
You know, it looks great. Okay. 30 years after the event of the first film, a new Blade Runner, LAPD Officer K, unearths a long buried secret that has the potential to plunge what's left of society into chaos. K's discovery leads him on a quest to find Rick Deckard, a former LAPD Blade Runner who has been missing for 30 years.
What a surprise it would have been to not know that Harrison Ford was going to be in this movie.
Well, can I talk? This is something I want to bring up. So first of all, I'm going to sing some praises about this movie, and then I'll get to my negatives. But I love, and this is a strange thing to say, but in a sci-fi thing like this, with the world as interesting in this, with the cinematographer as great as this, and the director as wonderful as this, the level of restraint that this film that shows in this fantastical world with fantastic people. I love, and we're getting into spoilers. It's 45 minutes into this podcast, even though we're just kind of starting to talk about this film. They don't use Harrison Ford until like the last third. And I think that is wonderful. They tease it a little bit with some audio files. They do a couple other little things, but like it feels very natural by the time it gets to him. And what I didn't want was them to like meet up in the first act and then buddy cop their way through this shit. And it didn't happen. It was great. So I think that was one example of just showing, like, you know, you have all these cards or you have all these skills or these traits that make a wonderful thing. And they're like, you know what, we're going to hold off on this. We're going to hold off on this until the right moment here. And in a world of summer schlockbusters, I think that was very refreshing.
Well, and what are your negatives?
Oh, I mean, we could get into that later.
Well, what's your overall opinion of the film?
I mean, overall, I think this movie is dope AF, as the kids are saying. I think everybody in this movie did an amazing job. This is the Ryan Gosling I like. I mean, I like funny Ryan Gosling, but we've gotten into fights about Drive. This is how that character should be played. He
yells weird.
He does yell weird. You're 100% right.
Like that one part where he freaks out, I just totally was like, what the hell?
But he's a robot. So I loved him. Oh my God. Joy is a joy. She's wonderful.
What's her name? Avna,
it is. I got it right here. It's Ana de Armas.
Ana de Armas.
Yeah.
Yep.
Friggin' Robin Wright is wonderful as the lieutenant. Batista, holy shit, I love Batista. Let's get him in more non-Drax roles and more Drax roles. Jared Leto,
yep,
nailing it out the park, I feel like. And what was the I keep nicknaming her the Terminatrix, but
Terminatrix, yeah.
Love,
Joy and Love.
Sylvia Hoeks. She was wonderful. Everybody
was she the bad replicant?
Yes.
Yeah. She was great.
Yeah. And I don't know. I just found, this is the thing. I really liked this movie, and I left with a couple questions that I wasn't quite sure if they had answered. And after doing a little bit of research, I realized that the questions that I was left with, they didn't really answer, which is fine. I was just wondering if I had missed a thing. But I don't know. This is what amazed me and why I thought I liked it so much. One, it's super long, and that's normally a turnoff for me. I was aware of the time, but it was never a detriment to me, which some could say that might even be its own subconscious detriment. That's neither here nor there. But also, because I don't have an affinity for or particularly like beyond its aesthetic, the original Blade Runner, and I liked this so much, I was like, damn, this is a good movie. Like, And it's funny because I see the writing on the wall. I see like it's getting some mixed reviews. A friend of mine's took their 13-year-old daughter and all of her friends to go see it, and the kids hated it because it's slow. Like it's slow, and it's not a lot of blowing up shit and like whatever. But that's, I think, a good thing. Again, restraint. I don't know. I dug the shit out of it. Timur, what did you think overall?
Well, I liked I actually thought the story was pretty good. I like, I think I said it was an 8 out of 10 on story and 235,257,212 out of 10 for art direction and cinematography.
It's a little low for a Deakins movie.
It's a little low for a Deakins movie, but I mean, like there's a lot of elements I like about it. There's also a lot of things I don't like about it. Like, I think some of the acting, whereas it worked really well in the first one, like Terrell's kind of clunkiness worked. Yeah. I think Wallace was a little like Shakespearean.
He's saddled with the role of being Tyrell in this movie. The rest of the movie isn't quite, doesn't have a Roy Batty, for example, to
really bounce off.
He's also saddled with the character that thinks he's God. Like that you're going to talk lofty when you think you're God. Like that's.
But that's the thing is if you're going to if that character, for example, is going to take the high horse and be God, he can't start talking about how, we just need to reenact slavery and everything will be fine. Like I feel like the writing in that one part where he talks about the disposable workforce and that. And now we're getting into a little bit of theology, but if we believe God is all powerful and God has a plan and God caused all the things in life to happen, then God already caused slavery, and there we go. So it's like, and I'm wrong.
No, but like I don't know. No, you can totally see his performance is sort of over the top. I get that, but I think I really liked it. I think it called for over the top, but I think when Jared Leto really sinks his teeth into something like this, this is the correct, like this is the way I want to see it. Not that there's an incorrect way to do that, but like, well, I guess there is. This is just the correct way, the way I enjoy. Damn it, I'm correct.
I mean, I didn't think he was bad. I thought he was great. I just felt like there was a couple moments where it just went a little too far, and it didn't pull me out of the story, and it wasn't anything particularly disruptive. And I take it we're in spoilers territory.
Oh yes, deep.
I really, really, really wish they didn't do the digital Rachel, because it was just like, oh my God, Princess Leia's there.
That was one of my negatives.
And it was exactly the same technology as Princess Leia from Rogue One. And Princess Leia freaked me out just as much as Rachel freaked me out. I would have rather they hired an actress who looked a lot like her.
They did have an actress playing her who they then digitally altered for the role.
Yeah, it just didn't look
that was the one moment where I felt the restraint fell, because there was a time when it cut away from her and she spoke, and I was like, yes, they're not going to show her fucking lips move. And I'm like, yes, please, just don't do that. And then they have her have one line, and I was like, oh, okay. What were you saying,
if they would have replicated from the original one the walk up, right, and how impressive that shot is to cinematic history, where she walks up and right before she settles into the, to deliver her line, just to go back to Jordan Cronenweth for a second, he just put a little piece of cardboard above the lens that made a shadow cross over her face for a second. Yeah. And it gave the audience like permission to breathe, like it's those little subtle things that make these shots so great. And they could have done something like that, just had her approach, and you see that it's Rachel. Cut to Decker, she delivers one or two lines and just push in on, Decker's face and leave her out of it. Yep. You understand who the character is, you can hear her voice, that's fine. But looking at that creepy, like Muppet looking, like fake human, oh man, that just really ruined it for me. I would have rather just seen Jared Leto in a wig.
It's a little bit of a, hey, look what we can do, and we're like, yeah, we know what you can do. Like that's the only time this movie does that.
But overall, I liked it. I mean, well acted. The story was interesting, beautifully directed. Obviously, the visuals are great. The one criticism I actually had, and it's the reason I agree with Shahir on the fact that the original Blade Runner actually kind of looks better is that I don't feel like the photography and the story are as well integrated
Right.
in this film. I still feel like these are beautiful set pieces with actors standing around them delivering lines.
Right.
Whereas in Blade Runner, it's almost like all that weird like howling, and there was always these like howls and whistles and wind chimes and, you know, kind of noises that made you feel like, you know, the air conditioning unit or something is making all this noise. And every scene had this, you know, cohesive world to it. This one, I didn't feel like the world was there as much. As beautiful as it was, the whole thing didn't gel quite as well. But on an individual shot-by-shot basis, I think Roger Deakins did better work than Jordan Cronenweth. But I don't, and this is very rare for Deakins because this is kind of his specialty, is creating cohesive films. I think that it felt a little bit more disjointed than it should have. Whereas the other one felt totally rock solid all the way through.
I'm going to both agree and disagree with you in a classic Matt Kroll fashion. I get the disconnect a little bit sort of from what you're saying here. I took it as, so they have this world that I think they you know, as we've discussed, even in shot by shot basis, they fleshed out very well, but they don't exactly, as much as say the original, put that world on display outside of its main characters. Is that kind of what you were saying a little bit? Like, I felt like they were hinting at a lot of a huge world, but then they decided only to focus on, which is fine, but it doesn't feel as, you know, mixed together.
Yeah, like for example, like I think a good example is, and it's kind of a semi-useless scene, really, but it does a lot of like world building, which is when Decker orders noodles in the beginning of Blade Runner, the original. So he sits there, he orders noodles, the guy doesn't understand him, he has to do it again. And you see all these characters and people with the lighted umbrellas, and he's standing in front of a record store, and he's, you know, like, and you get a sense that, oh, wow, there's, you know, there's a hustle and there's a bustle. This one to me felt more compartmentalized in
yes, I'll agree with that. Yeah.
The car. They were in the car a lot.
Well, they were in the car a lot in the old one too. Half that movie is Harrison Ford staring out a window.
But then he would get out of the car and go order noodles. in a crowd of people where, you know, you can see other characters, and there were scenes that tried to do that with the prostitutes and
and they don't hit as hard. I 100% agree with that.
They just didn't have that oomph a little bit, and I don't know if that's old school Ridley Scott genius mixing with Jordan Cronenweth genius and creates all kinds of craziness, or if that's just, I don't know, maybe we just, because everyone has so much history of the original, we look back at it and put it on the pedestal, and automatically it's better no matter what.
I definitely agree that the outside city scenes, if we're looking at that noodle shop scene versus the scene where Kay gets confronted by the prostitutes here, noodle shop scene 100% all day, every day. It feels more real or more lived in. But I do think that overall, that's not the norm, at least for my experience of this movie. Another thing, unless Shahir, I'm sorry, we're just going back and forth. You got something, buddy?
Yeah, sure. I'll jump in here with my overall thoughts of the film. I think you guys have touched on a few interesting notes about the contextualization of how this film is cohesive versus incohesive. I admired the film. I have to admit, I didn't love it, but I think I will definitely see it again, which is probably as good a praise as I think I can give it at this point. In that I think this is definitely a film with multiple viewings. My major issue with this, and I guess my indifference slightly to the original Blade Runner, is I think philosophically the questions that this film is asking of us as an audience and asking about the world that it's created are fundamentally somewhat uninteresting to me. In that, you know, like the original Blade Runner asked the question, what if you suddenly found out, what if you didn't know you were a machine? And how would that fundamentally alter your perception of the world around you? And this film kind of flips that on its head, which is that it's, what if you are a machine, but you might actually have a soul? And I think that's a moderately interesting question, but it's steeped in a production design and a world that is so departed from any basis of reality that I understand, that I found it hard to get emotionally engaged in in Kay's dilemma. While the questions were being asked about, his humanity and does he have a soul, I was like, well, in this universe, that might be an interesting question. In my universe, where I'm watching this from, that reflects no interesting parallels that I can grasp onto. It runs concurrently with a story of Kay and his artificial lover Joy, and I think the parallels that the way that those two stories run are actually thematically interesting, but they feel like they're two different movies to me, and one which doesn't quite gel together. I know by the end of this movie, the story of Kay and Joy kind of meshes in a parallel way with the story of Kay's discovery of his own humanity, or the questioning of his own humanity. But it's done in there's such a level of artifice to this movie that I found that it actually, philosophically, I'm not that interested in whether Kay is human or whether Dickett is a replicant.
See, sorry.
And the films, this is we've been talking about Blade Runner and this film, and we steep those in the sort of authorship of Ridley Scott and Jordan Cronenworth and Roger Deakins and Denis Villeneuve. The person we sort of sometimes occasionally forget in this is Philip K. Dick and his story "Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep?" And I think, for all it's worth, I think the topics that Philip K. Dick, touched on in Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep are better told in other films that have been adapted of his work. So I think, for example, philosophically, I think Minority Report is a far more interesting film and has a lot more interesting things to say about our reality, even though it's steeped in an artifice that is not our own. I think a film like I would even say a film like Total Recall kind of toys around with some of these ideas in a more interesting way. I would other films have touched upon some of the philosophical ideas of like shared memories and what is the definition of love and what is the definition of artificiality? So a film like Her, I think, is more emotionally engaging. Ex Machina, I think, gets into this idea of humanity of machines a little bit better. And it's not that none of this is there in this film, and I do want to see it again. I'm kind of drawn back to that comment you made earlier, Timur, about like what it must have been like in 1982 watching Blade Runner for the first time. I wonder if, like in 10, 15 years when I watch Blade Runner 2049, I might take it slightly differently. But at this stage, my main problem with this film is that it is a beautiful piece of work. It is a gorgeous piece of work. It is, but I'm oddly unengaged with it and oddly unmoved by it.
I think for the reasons that you've just described, the movie itself kind of goes against a lot of the thing or transitions due to the twist of what sort of happens in it. Making me experience the point of it as something completely different from any of the stuff that you've just brought up. In fact, the fact that it doesn't really do that stuff well, I 100% agree with, because I don't think that's what it's actually trying to do. I don't think this movie is making you do like the question of, does he have a soul or blah, 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 blah. It starts out that way 100%. And then it left turns real hard when first you think, it's funny. I thought I was so clever when I was watching it. I'm like, oh, he's the kid. Kay's the kid. kid. Kay's the kid that was born from the replicant. He's got the horse. He's got the memory. Whoa. And he's going to uncover it. Now he's talking to Harrison Ford and it's his dad. It's going to be crazy. And then I was like, as that was happening before the main twist into the third act, I was like, yeah, that's neat. And then I was like, oh, I don't give a shit. And then there was all this stuff, Shahir, you just brought up, like the soul crap and blah, blah, blah. I'm just like, okay. And then the twist happens, and it happens in the same, this sort of revelation happens a little bit very close to one another between the relationship with him and Joy and this revelation that, in fact, he is not this special replicant baby.
One.
He's not the chosen one. He's just a regular fucking replicant. And in around that same time, you realize that the love of his life, Joy, who is essentially a Siri product, does not actually love him as he's walking by her in the billboard and realizes why she named him Joe and like all this other stuff. There's this fucking cacophony of just realizing, you know what? Kay, Joe, whatever, Ryan Gosling, you're not special. And no one in this story is special. And then what do you do with that information? Again, I've said this quote a couple times in this podcast. If nothing we do matters, then all that matters is what we do. That's a Joss Whedon quote from fucking Angel. And that is the theme that I feel like is the most prominent. And even though it does flip flop to get there, that I think is the point of it. When Kay just decides like, wow, I'm not special. You know what would be really fucking good of me to do? Get Deckard to his daughter. And then he just decides this literally a nobody risks his entire life to just do this one thing. And depending on how you read the end of this movie, he might sacrifice his life to do this one thing. So I found that notion of building up all this stuff that you talked about that sort of didn't work. And I 100% agree. If that's where I think it was trying to go, it would not work. And then just being like, no, oh, that's bullshit. Be a good fucking person. Like there's a beauty to that and what's the word I'm looking for? Just sort of a finality to that and a dark, empty void of happiness to that. And I really dig that. So that was kind of the message I took across from it.
Matt, do you think that, Kay's decision to finally do something right in light of the information that he's not special, is that his Terminator lowering himself into the vat of molten steel moment? I mean, is that his, what's her name? Oh my God, the police chief says, you've been doing fine without a soul.
Yeah, it is the realization that he has that the soul doesn't come from being born. It's
earned in a sense.
I would say that it is. I guess we're just looking at it from different philosophical points of view. It's not that he earned his soul there or that's where it is. It's that souls don't matter. None of this matters. None of this soul talk. It doesn't fucking matter. You make your own sort of destiny based on what you want to do, no matter if you're the chosen one or just some regular Joe. And that's something that I love when I see sort of narratives like that and things that sort of twist into that direction, because and again, this is coming from me, like, I believe that we are a cosmic coincidence on a speck of dust, like all this stuff. I could go into my whole, like, why are we here sort of thing. It's not based on any religion. It's not on any of that sort of stuff. It's just, I think there's a beauty to when we kind of step back from any sort of theology or reasoning or sort of like just why are we here in general as a species or like whatever. And you just and not even just realize, because I don't know if I'm right. I'm just saying if we're just a coincidence or if there's nothing really special about any of this, that in itself is this beautiful freedom. And this movie at the end of it, and I didn't think it was going to head that way, really touched on those points. And it was definitely speaking to my wheelhouse. So I think that might be a reason why I was very passionate about it. But again, I can totally see how it can be read many different ways based on belief structure.
Well, I mean, like, for example, like as far as purely story-wise, right? The most interesting part of the entire story to me was the opening scene with David Bautista.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that was just played beautifully.
It was played beautifully, but honestly, when he says, "You've never seen a miracle," and then he pops a cap in his ass, and that's it for David Bautista. But the truth is, that line stayed with me for the whole movie because it actually generated yeah, it actually generated interest. I was like, what does he mean?
Yeah.
Wait, what's he talking about? And it's a what miracle? And I kept through the whole movie, I just kept asking that, what is that? And then they discover the bones.
Right.
And then they discover, oh crap, this was a pregnant replicant.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, oh, the miracle's a baby, and I feel like I almost wanted to watch the story. I wish Blade Runner 2049 was David Bautista and the bad guy was the Roy Batty was Ryan Gosling.
Right.
I mean, sure. And they definitely, I didn't watch it yet, but they did do an animation to bridge the gaps.
They did 3 short films to bridge the gaps.
But I don't know if it even touches. I don't know.
No, they do. The Batista's character is elaborated a little bit further on. It basically does a film the day before Kay turns up at his door when he's trying to sell some of his wares out in the city. The short films kind of it'll extrapolate a little bit on the film, but they're not necessarily. I think the most interesting one is perhaps the one about Jared Leto's character Wallace and his sort of goal to reintroduce replicants into the world. Yeah, look, I think it's mildly interesting, and I think it's dancing around some topics that I think are weighty. But my problem is, unlike say a film like Children of Men or Minority Report or even Ex Machina, where there is even those films are set in a heightened reality that's far devoid from our own. There is a
Children of Men's very close to our own.
Maybe our own in the next 5 years.
Yeah.
There's a resonance to those films that touch upon the world we live in, and I found generally the question of the soul in this film and what is humanity if artificiality can be birthed, like as Gosling says, I've never killed something that was born because being born presumes that you have a soul, and she says you've been doing fine without one for so long. I just find all of those questions a little bit less impactful because we know that Kay is a replicant and what the impact of his having a soul doesn't seem to matter. And here's the other thing as well, is I think narratively what happens in this film, it feels like from a story point of view, the stakes are very high for each of these characters. But when you step back and you watch it from the point of view of like, well, what is actually happening and who wants what, the stakes seem actually a little bit odd and muddled and a little bit low. Like, what does Wallace want with Deckard? And why is he so hell bent on getting him? Like his main goal should
They don't touch on that a lot.
And like what and like it just seems to, none of this seems to resolve in a way that explores the philosophical potential of what they're trying to get at. Now, I think again, this is, it goes without saying, but I'm going to say it. It's a masterfully made film. And I think, the other side of this that maybe I'm starting to find not tiresome, but I'm just like, oh, we've done this song and dance before. In the world of the rebooted Harrison Ford franchise, the deadbeat Harrison Ford father figure is something we've seen 3 times over now.
What was the third?
Indiana Jones, The Force Awakens, and this.
I forgot about Indiana Jones. He's
the absentee father.
I have blocked Crystal Skull from my memory,
and so I'm just, it's playing on a trope that I've kind of feel like we've danced around a little bit before. Look, I will definitely watch this film again. I will definitely try this on again. And I think if you go online and read, there's lots of things to find in this film. I just find, and that is not to say there aren't joyous, interesting scenes. Like, I think one of the best scenes is when Joy decides to invite a replicant over and engage in sex with Kay. The only thing is, that scene feels like it's from a different movie entirely.
I think it feels like it's from the same movie. I just feel like it's for the B plot, and also you just like it because it's robot hologram sex.
Well, I think it's interestingly played. Yeah, it's interesting. It's interesting play, but it was better done in Her. Like, and I think it fits better in a film like Her, which is about that kind of relationship. And you know, the other thing that I think is really beautiful that I really loved is this idea of shared memories, which is something that Philip K. Dick has gotten into quite a lot, and it's this idea that the daughter of Deckard has a shared memory with Kay.
And there's something. Oh, sorry. There's something that's not clear about that. Is why he sort of has that.
Right, well,
there's a bunch of different theories, but it's not made intrinsically clear in the film why Kay has it. Or do multiple replicants have it? Has she been planting seeds to try to get someone to find the clues?
They explained this like 100%, where they said that Deckard says, I told them how to cover their tracks. We cut to a shot of 2 DNA samples that are identical, and so they were both implanted with the same memory in order so that Kay could find her.
I don't get it. I'm sorry. I'm lost.
But I mean, it's explained that he was implanted with that memory.
But to find her?
To find her or not to find, again, that's it's a little bit loose at that point.
I'm gonna have to watch that again because definitely that. I remember that moment, but I don't remember that moment having that.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of the narrative points about like, you know, because the inscription on the tree is the inscription that it's at the bottom of his memory, so it triggers his memory in order to find her. But
how would they know that he would be there?
Wallace says something really profound that plays into the is Deckard a replicant question without ever answering it, which is when when Wallace brings Deckard to see his Rachel, he asked the question, perhaps the genius of Tyrell was that you two were supposed to meet. You two were always designed to meet, and that's why you are, you know, that's why this baby was born. You know, it is all part of the master program. And I think, you know, again, mildly interesting. I think played well. Doesn't resonate with me for some reason. It just doesn't, like, none of this really echoed in a way that made me sit up in my seat. I agree that the moment when I appreciated that Kay turns out not to be the chosen one. I thought that was a smart move because
on
everything,
both levels.
Well, everything up until that point was like, okay, he's the chosen one, Kay's the son. He just doesn't realize it yet. And then you've got Harrison Ford and Ryan Gosling like playing opposite each other, and it all makes sense. But so it is smart to actually like undercut that and not have that moment, not let him have that moment.
Yeah.
Much in the same way, I think a film like Snowpiercer does the same thing.
Yeah.
So, you know, again, admired this film a lot. Really, really did admire it. And in fact, as much as I think Blade Runner, Ridley Scott's Blade Runner is a better looking film, I think Blade Runner 2049 is a better film. I'm still just not interested.
Say that again?
Ridley Scott's Blade Runner is a better looking movie.
There we go. That's what it was.
Blade Runner 2049 is a better movie.
Gotcha.
But I, you know, again, if you asked me which Philip K. Dick adaptation should I watch that will question, you know, make you question life and philosophy as you know it, I would point to Minority Report. And I wouldn't necessarily point to this.
I guess that was kind of a final thought.
Yeah, that was kind of but a beautiful film, definitely worth every dollar you can spend on it at a big screen. Beautifully directed, beautifully acted, beautifully written. You know, it's got all the hallmarks of all the great things, but for me, not the resonant. And maybe that'll come in future viewings.
Yeah, I'm gonna say my quick things. Then Timur will have you close it up. So, you know, we've talked about what we've disagreed with and what we've sort of agreed with. All the good things, I definitely agree with what everyone has sort of said, and some of the bad things as well. But I'm going to go with just to sort of close off because I feel like I've just been doing a bit of a love fest with this. There are a few things that are a bit problematic in this movie that I do love and think you should go see. One of which, you know, obviously the CGI Rachel, that was a big problem for me, and I know, Timur, you brought that up as well. Also, I
hate to jump in on that, but I actually thought that was really smartly played the way they did that, and it works so much better than Carrie Fisher.
It did until they showed character. Lips move and speak at the same time for me. I was like, oh, you fucked it up. You came so close to not fucking it up, and you fucked it up for me.
The only reason I'll say that I think it works is that she's supposed to be a simulation of something that we've seen before.
Well, she's supposed to be an exact replicant of a replicant, but the problem is she's not. That's the issue. She's not. She literally. I know she's supposed to be a robot.
It's like a copy of a copy. And that's why it works for me. Like it's not 100% perfect, and that's
whereas the eyes thing. I guess
just in general. Like whereas Carrie Fisher is supposed to be Carrie Fisher,
took me out of it. And then also there's some other problematic things just on sort of a filmmaking level. This isn't exactly the most inclusive film. Which again, not everything, I mean, it's in this time, and I noticed it. I'm like, there's a lot of white people, and then also the joy. While I did really like their relationship, if you kind of take a step back, we're getting into a bit of going from like a manic pixie dream girl to more of like this almost like weird sciencey sort of like subjugation of the female role in movies these days a little bit. And, this gets into a lot of lofty questions about like, AI and what, this thing is literally programmed to love whoever bought it. Mm-hmm. And I know other things have done this too, but then like what, then you could either go real dark and be like, well, this is a very sort of like very patriotical fucking, message there, or what you could get into the whole thing of like, what is love? Is all of our experiences encoding us to be falling in love with whoever we fall in love with? And isn't that not just the same thing? I don't know. It's just it's not, that level's not explored. It's just sort of like, she's a product. And so that you could look at in a negative light.
I guess the only way to answer that question is Robin Wright Penn, who's the other female human in this character, in this film, doesn't have the ability to have sex with robots the way that Kay does in this film.
Say that again?
She doesn't have sexual. She doesn't have a sexual subservience with replicants or anything. The film doesn't like explore that this could operate on both sides. It only seems to exist for male characters.
Right. Yes. 100%.
That would be the defining feature of like whether this makes.
Though she does come on to him lightly, comes on to Kay very lightly in his apartment, but that's not the same thing.
No.
But other than that, look, this could have totally gone off the rails being a fucking reboot of a sci-fi franchise or sequel, and it didn't. So go see it. I'm sorry, I rambled. Timur, take us home, buddy.
Well, I mean, I think it's an interesting thing to compare the two films because of the history surrounding the original and just how impactful it was to science fiction and creating pretty much single-handedly creating the entire genre of cyberpunk in itself. And the difference is that, following up an act that big, the fact that this film was as functional and beautiful and well created and thoughtfully crafted, I think it's a definite C, and it deserves a place in film history for even if not maybe the best piece of storytelling ever, but just from a visual and technical sense, I think it did honor the first film appropriately. That said, of course, everything has their sores on everything. The original had some huge problems, and this one had a few problems, mainly with just how bad Rachel looked as just a non-functional piece of CG. But every other minute, there was some really groundbreaking lighting effects and camera tricks at play here. So,
what was the name of that water lighting effect?
Lucifaction.
All over Lucifaction for days in this film.
For days in this thing.
I think Timur, you and I were talking offline about the use of lucifaction in 2049, which is beautiful. But I found it a little. I think it's a point that you mentioned as well, Matt, which is that this film felt like very much like characters placed in beautiful sets, as opposed to living in full world. That having been said, I want Jared Leto's Aqua Office. Like, I want it now. I think how humid it's going to be in there. I don't give a shit. He can build people. He's figured out humidity. I also love the the analogy to in a blind world, the one-eyed man is king, where the leader of the replicants is a one-eyed woman, and Jared Leto's Wallace is entirely blind. Why did you remind me of that part? I hate that part. I just feel like it was like the dance scene in fucking Matrix 4. Whoa, oh, how so? What do you mean?
I don't know. It was like, oh God, there's a rebellion now. Like there's rebels. Are they is like Ray gonna show up with the fucking Rolly robot thing? And like
it has a name and it's BB-8.
Sure. I love Star Wars for sure. But I mean, I don't know. There was some clunky stuff in this, and you know what it was? I don't think it was that it was even clunky. I think the big flaw in this film was that it tried to do a little too much.
Right.
Possibly.
My wife has this great thing that she says. She goes, whenever you do anything, whether you're getting dressed, you're designing something, you're cooking something, you're lighting something, whatever it is in your life, do all the things you think you want to do, and right before you execute it, take one thing out.
Right.
Yeah, that's smart.
And I think that was what this was missing, and I think that's what the original had. It was just a little bit of let's go far, but not too far. Yeah. And it's not enough to kill it for me at all.
No.
I love it, but I just think that there was a lot going on. There was a lot going on in this movie. Dude was walking around inside of a head for a while.
Yeah.
It was like a giant sculpture head thing. And he was like walking through that. And then next thing you know, like David Bautista's throwing him through a wall face first.
I do love the implementation of all the technology in this film. I think it is a really beautifully designed film. Like from the actual thinking of how things work and also the visual sense of how things look in this world. There's one transition in this film that will go down for me as one of the best cinematic transitions.
Which one?
And it would be firelight embers into a cityscape.
Oh God,
which was
so good.
Yeah, that was pretty good.
Yeah, it was pretty amazing. I wish the film had a little more of that kind of sense of dreaminess. I guess might have made the sort of the ponderance of philosophical questions a little more interesting for me.
Well, we all have likes and unlikes about this movie, but I think we can all agree, go see it. No one's going to say it.
Definitely great.
Anyway, this has been the only podcast about Blade Runner 2049. Timur, thank you so much for coming on and chatting it up with us. When you're not maybe proving that you aren't a replicant, where can folks find you?
Well, first, thank you for having me. And second, you can find me at TimurSavant.com or at Timur Savant on Instagram or Twitter.
Can you spell that for us, Timur? Just to,
Yes.
Sure. TIMURCIVAN.
Yeah.
Fantastic. A lot of great work there. And a lot of great work that you might see of mine on there as well. Not to double dip.
Wow.
Did
you see? Yeah. Listen, Timur, your stuff's great, but did you see how great Shahir's stuff is on your site?
I'm just saying that there was this video with this like sound wave thing. It was pretty awesome. This Indian guy made it. It was awesome. I loved it.
And some robots. Let's not forget about the robots.
Shahir, when you're not taking shine away from your boy,
when I'm not double dipping in Timur's soup,
where can folks find you?
You can find me at shahirdaud.com. That's SHAHIRDAUD. Matthew Kroll, tell us where you can find you and us.
You can find me at Skeletor, the number 4 PREZ on Instagram, Emperor MSK on Twitter, or MatthewKroll.com for all my life and works. You can find us at onlymoviepodcast@gmail.com. What did you think of this 2049 year? Do you think it was worthwhile? Do you think it's better, worse, other? Tell us what you think about this movie, and we will talk about it next crime. You can also find us at Only Movie Pod on Twitter, and please keep the iTunes reviews a-rolling because they help us help you.
Help us help you in the Jerry Maguire sense.
Help me help you.
In the post-Reagan imbalance of toxic masculinity.
Woo!
Also, we are a lot behind on our listener requests. We will get to them once there's like a decent opening of not as many big movies coming out.
Yes. And also, we have a live show coming up.
We do have a live show coming up.
This is the first time we can talk about it. What date is it again? Do you remember? Because I'll pull up my calendar right now. This is how new it is.
Spooktober 26th.
Yeah. We are doing it at QED in Astoria. I believe it's at 9 p.m. We're going to be doing just a sort of a retrospective and sort of horror and why it all works for us. We're going to have some special guests we'll announce later. It's going to be fucking cool. I'm psyched.
If you live in Astoria or in New York City, please come out and see us. Fun fact, Sean Young, who plays Rachel in the original movie, lives in Astoria.
Really?
Really?
Well, I hope she comes. So come check us out there. And this does it for this episode. Thank you, Timur, once again. Thank you, Shahir.
Thank you.
And we will see y'all next week, unless, of course, we are retired. And by that, we mean executed. And by that, we mean retired or executed. Look, we might be dead.
Only podcast can't come to the phone right now. Why not? We're dead.
Thanks, Taylor. Bye.